a safety focused space because this, I believe, is the topic where Teslas have one of the largest advantages in all aspects and also at the same time most deeply underrated. Like when you ask folks, what are the safest car brands? Most people don't say Tesla in the list. They'll say things like Volvo or Mercedes or maybe Subaru. But Tesla doesn't really come up in that top, even though Teslas are, according to data, the most um, safest cars ever produced.
Yeah, agreed. Back in the day, because I'm old, Volvo did a lot of advertising about they were the safest cars. And Mercedes did too with their airbag invention back in the day. But yeah, Tesla doesn't really advertise as we know, so maybe they will at some point and people will become more informed.
Yeah. Until then, we have these spaces. Omar, welcome. How are you?
Hey, doing good. Sold 2 Model Ys today, so feeling good about that.
All right. Yeah, so I thought we would do a Sunday night extra space on Tesla safety focused. Do you agree that this is probably the area where Tesla is most deeply underrated?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I sold 2 Model Ys to two of my uncles today. So I went over, I helped them with the ordering process, and you talk to all the people who are buying a Tesla. And so they brought up the cost of gas, they brought up charging, they brought up, some of that stuff. Safety didn't really come up. It's not really one of the things that people think about when they think about Tesla. But I mean, it's so much safer than other vehicles that it's almost like you hate yourself and your family if you buy anything else, honestly. It's that far ahead. I mean, why do people think Volvo is safe? Because they invented the 3-point seatbelt. When was that? Like 50 fucking years ago? Well, guess what? Everybody's got a fucking seatbelt with 3 points now, okay? That's no longer cutting edge technology. That was cutting edge technology back then. What have they thought of lately? Exactly. Nothing. Their cars are the same as everybody else's. It's all marketing. Meanwhile, Tesla, they actually have, I mean, they take safety to another level. The 5 star, that's kind of the minimum for them. They go above and beyond what the safety standards even ask for in so many different ways. I mean, there's a really long list of ways. So I think we can easily fill a space talking about it, honestly.
We have Wes on the board. We have Meta coming up as well. If anybody has any, what I would really like is if people have stories of their own Tesla, either improving your life, your safety, or maybe even saving your life. Please request to speak and share your story with the rest of the space. Wes, what's your favorite safety feature of a Tesla?
I probably would have to be AEB. So when we first started developing AEB at Tesla, we looked at all of the vehicles that were currently shipping it and their relative ways of measuring it, and we tried to do it much, much better. So the way that NHTSA and IIHS, the way they look at that is they want to be sure that you don't have false negatives or false positives. In other words, because AEB can be full brakes, like 1.1 Gs of deceleration. And that can, if there is a unbuckled person or anything that's loose inside the vehicle, it's going to go flying forward. So you don't want to have false positives, and obviously you don't want to have a false negative either, where you don't stop for something that you should have, and then you don't reduce any of your crash energy. So AEB was kind of like, it was very, very difficult to be sure that when you saw something from the cameras that and we were only doing front cameras. Now side cameras have been implemented. Ashok talked about that, which is a first for the industry. You have to be absolutely certain that you're seeing something that you're going to do full brakes for, and potentially even override to some extent what the driver is doing. Like if the driver has their foot on the accelerator and you see a crash is imminent, you calculate that vector and you know that you're going to hit something. You have to start to warn them and provide potentially some amount of braking force or reduce the acceleration that's being applied by the user. Like the user might be asleep, or they might be, incapacitated, and you know that it's the wrong thing. And so that's my favorite feature. And back in the day, we could capture a very, very small amount of clips by default when airbags were deployed, and AEB was mitigating sometimes up to 95% of crash energy, and it was easily saving people's lives right out of the gate. And we could see that as soon as we implemented it. So that's my favorite one.
Thank you, Wes. I asked Google Gemini to come up with a top 10 list for Tesla safety, and number one was low center of gravity. Obviously, something that ICE vehicles can't match. Low center of gravity. Due to the placement of the battery pack along the bottom of the car, Teslas have a low center of gravity than most SUVs and sedans. This makes them significantly less likely to roll over in an accident. Number two was rigid safety cage. Number three, frontal and side impact collision protection. 4, battery protection. 5, ADAS. I thought that's what you were going to say, Wes. I thought you were going to say, autopilot.
Oh, gotcha. Well, my main reason for going to Tesla as a cyclist, I wanted to reduce the likelihood or eliminate the likelihood that a Tesla would ever hit a cyclist ever again. And so AEB was the way that was kind of, ensured that would never cause like a permanent injury. So that's why that one's my favorite. But again, we implemented that. It was one of the first things that we implemented because safety is paramount. So we implemented safety features first before we implemented comfort features. And you could have made the argument back in the day that FSD and the full self-driving suite, that was more comfort. Now it's a safety issue because everything else has been nailed. So you've got to look at that as more safety at this point, and I'm sure we'll get into those figures and numbers.
Would you please remind folks in the space when you worked at Tesla and what your role was?
Sure. So I was there from 2014 into 2015, and we rolled out while I was there. I was the I was called the staff program manager, and I was the only one. During my tenure, we hired over 50 people and quadrupled the size of the team. And we rolled out the first set of driver assistance features, which AEB falls into that because it's implemented from what they called back then like high-tech cameras. And so we rolled out AEB and side collision warning and lane departure warning and traffic aware cruise control and at the first implementation of FSD for steering. And we did all that in about a year and a half while I was there. And so it was just me as the PM. So I did all of the PM type stuff. So anything having to do with writing a spec or financial or budget or determining like what the cost of the feature would be, any type of public relations or any type of verbiage that was presented to the customer, all of the UI design, all of that stuff. So that was me.
Thank you, Wes. Do you have a story while you were at Tesla that kind of shows the company's focus on safety? Kind of any specific story that happened, maybe in the office, maybe with an Elon visit, or something that you wouldn't see at another company, but you did it at Tesla?
Yeah, and that's super easy. It was the first meeting that I had with Elon. And that was the meeting where we were finalizing the sensor suite for the vehicle, and we were trying to determine if we needed more than just one radar. So we were determining if we needed corner radar or not. And the first thing out of Elon's mouth, which I'll never forget, was, "I want to be sure that we have safety first. Safety is paramount. So, do we need these for safety? Not for comfort features or, for ease of development, but just for safety as a foundational part of what we were trying to decide. So, from an engineering standpoint, do you need them?" Uh, and that was like so refreshing for me coming from Microsoft, is that it wasn't as um, a priority for Microsoft to have like the customer's best interests in mind. That didn't always happen, and I had to fight for that as a PM. The customer insights or customer delight was a difficult thing sometimes to prioritize, but I didn't even have to think about that on day one. Like he was adamant about it, and so I was just so refreshing. I was like, oh great, like we can just talk about the right thing to do, which is how I would define it. And it was just I continued to have that feeling in every meeting that we had. It just, the things that came from him resonated with me for safety. It just made things flow much easier. We just come in and say to a meeting, it's like, well, we really want to implement this feature, but we need help like from the navigation team to do this. And we think this is going to make the car a lot safer, like because it's going to know exactly what type of a road it's on. If it's on a class 5 highway, with higher speed limits, like then we can better calculate when we should do full brakes for AEB. And he's like, well, when is the navigation team going to be able to? And it's like, yeah, they're not going to be able to help us for a couple quarters. He's like, no, no, no. And this was yet another meeting where he asked JB to get the navigation team, which was sitting right outside the office, and brought them in to the room and said, how can we do this right now? And so we got that feature prioritized so that we could implement our safety features faster. So 2 quick stories for you.
Thank you. That's very valuable. Thank you very much. Omar, what do you think of those stories? Safety is paramount. I want to make sure we have these sensors, or we don't need these sensors for safety. I want to make sure that we're maximizing safety.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. It is something he said publicly too. He's always reinforced safety. They've always pushed the standards forward. And, he's kind of talking about the first version. But more than that, many other companies, they'd say, okay, we got automatic emergency braking. That's good. We're done. But they kept iterating year after year after year after year. And they've now arrived at much more advanced versions of the feature than anybody else have. Like, for example, automatic emergency braking is now pretty common on new cars. It'll automatically brake if, there's something in front of you, but it is often so annoying that people turn it off, right? It sometimes goes off accidentally or something, and people go, what the hell? And they just turn it off and they don't get that safety benefit anymore. Not only does Tesla not have that problem, they support all kinds of things the others don't. Like, for example, in their automatic emergency braking, they now support crossing objects. So normally on most cars, automatic emergency braking only applies to a car that's like right in front of you, or a cyclist, or anything that's right in front of you. But Tesla can do crossing objects because they can actually predict. They know the difference between someone who's on your side who's stopped and someone who's moving. And, at CVPR, for example, they've shown examples of this. So they're pretty much the only ones to ship crossing traffic AEB. And that's just sort of one example of how they've just continued to extend these features in ways that are just far beyond what the rest of the industry offers.
Omar, why do you think Tesla's safety is not well known? Is it just the fact that Tesla doesn't advertise? I mean, we are advertising now, right?
Well, the details are quite technical, right? So, okay, seatbelt, sure, you can maybe understand that. But actually, when they first introduced the seatbelt, a lot of people didn't like it. They said it was annoying. They said, I don't need to be tied down. They said it's actually safer to be thrown from the vehicle. So, in time, consumers will come to understand these benefits. But it's a little bit technical and hard to understand. My girlfriend was just test driving a Model 3 over the weekend, and she said, wow, this car came out of nowhere. I didn't see it. And the autopilot just got out of the way. It moved over and it avoided a collision. I feel like it saved me from a crash. So people keep hearing stories like this. Eventually, they're going to sort of internalize it. But for example, the structural safety of an EV, that's not really well understood. The AI aspect of it, the software update aspect of it, unless you're an expert in software or an expert in AI or an expert in structural engineering of a car, you're not necessarily going to know about these things. So
Yeah.
low center of gravity, that's great. What does it mean? It means you can't roll over. No engine in the front. That means the front is a big crumple zone. So all the force of the crash gets absorbed by that front of the car, which just sort of compresses like a Coke can, as opposed to in a normal car where the engine gets pushed into the passenger component and can injure you or kill you.
Number 6 on Gemini's top 10 reasons why Teslas are safer is over-the-air software updates, like Omar said. Tesla vehicles can receive software updates over the air, which means that Tesla can improve the safety features of its vehicles even after they have been delivered to customers. This allows Tesla to stay up to date on the latest safety technologies and to address any potential safety issues quickly. I mean, one example of that was, do you remember the story? Consumer Reports published something about the braking distance. Meta, would you like to remind us of that?
Sure. I don't remember the exact specifics, but even though the vehicles had passed and gotten more than 5 stars, I think it was a Model 3, there was a Consumer Reports review where they had done a review and the braking distance, they were criticizing it relative to another vehicle. And by the time they were going to publish the review, I think they had reached out to Tesla for comment. Tesla had said, just hold on. They did a software update, pushed it, and then instead of the review coming out negative, they gave a review that was to the effect of, the car wasn't stopping at these distances. We reached out to Tesla and they were able to send us a software update. And with that software update, now it is braking at those proper distances. There's a similar set of stories, like multiple of these stories where they refine actuators or I remember one, with like hills, they were able to shift the power from the front motor to the back motor if you had dual motors to like choose which motors to put the torque in if you're going up a hill or down a hill. Not just for efficiency, but also where the torque is, you have more control, so it's a little bit safer if you got into a rear-ending situation. So there's all these like little things that add up over time that they've done. But if I could, I would love to talk about the why people don't realize it's safe piece afterwards.
Yeah, let me just say one more thing. I just asked Grok top 10 reasons, and Grok had over-the-air updates as number 4. Tesla vehicles can receive software updates over the air, allowing the company to quickly address potential safety issues and improve existing safety features without requiring a visit to a service center. Yeah, I mean, it's also, I mean, we should note over-the-air updates is something Tesla has been able to do since 2010. Legacy others still can't replicate it.
The really important piece that needs to be understood is like think about how many updates Tesla has sent to date to all the vehicles across the fleet. And all those updates they've never, that I know of, bricked a production vehicle. So there's no customer that's like, I installed this update and my car stopped working. And with software, that's very easy to mess up. And it's not like, you know, phones where it's like, oh, if you mess up the phone, it's okay. You can allow someone to exchange the phone or deal with that. For vehicles to accomplish this with all the different parts, all the variety of vehicles, because you got to remember Tesla's always updating all the different parts, refining vehicles, and doing all that stuff. To accomplish this is no small feat.
Wes, I see you posted a link to live chat and you said Tesla implemented AEB in 2014, 2015, and the rest of the industry agreed to implement across their fleets by 2022. Would you like to tell us more about that?
Yeah, we were largely nearly the first company to do this to a great extent, like to the entire fleet. Because, I mean, Elon was adamant that safety is standard on the vehicle, and we did everything we could to make it standard, and that it continues today. The rest of the industry pushed back hard, and you can go and look at any new technology, even seatbelts, windshield wipers, headlights, the whole gambit. You know, the transition from drum brakes to disc brakes. Like, the industry has pushed back against safety every time, and they continue to do this with backup cameras, which was the third brake light. But backup cameras, the standard was pushed out to become mandatory for, I think, over 8 years. It was pushed out because, you know, they said, oh, it's going to add too much cost to the vehicle. So we implemented it with our cameras and radar, you know, in 2014, and then continued to refine it, like Meta was talking about with over-the-air updates, which was unheard of back then. Obviously, it's still largely unheard of to be able to update all aspects of the vehicle, all, you know, anything that's actuated electronically, which is our rolling computer, which we call a Tesla vehicle, is all updatable OTA. And basically, if you look at all of the data currently for over-the-air updates for NHTSA recalls, every single OEM has to do that at the dealer. But Tesla does it while the vehicle is anywhere, at your home or work, or it doesn't matter where it is. So you can get those security updates or safety updates or feature updates, you know, wherever you are. So we did this in very early on, and kind of drove the industry to show that you could do this across your whole fleet, and you could update it so that when you got new algorithms and things continually got better from the data that you were collecting, you could just continually improve it over time. And this is, I was about to post a couple other links as well, has driven not only the industry to do better, but has also driven NHTSA and the IIHS to accelerate their testing methodologies and their requirements for getting 5 stars in their crash tests. Because even when the vehicle, and I'm sure we'll talk about this more, there's 2 different types of safety. One is keeping you from getting in an accident, and the other one is when you have crash energy, is being able to distribute that in a way that keeps the passengers safe, and also whatever is being struck, keeping that thing, the vehicle or pedestrian or vulnerable road users, VRUs, keeping them as safe as possible. Like, the hood will actually actuate in a way that allows, if somebody is hit, allows them to have a much lower chance of permanent injury. And so we implemented that as well. And I can talk about all of those features. But this is something that is pretty near and dear to me that we kind of drove the industry to come to the fact that they can do this too. And that's what that article kind of talks about, is that that wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if Elon hadn't have pushed safety as being standard across the whole fleet. I think that is a huge win for humanity. And I don't even think people really understand that. So I'm glad to have this space to talk about it.
Thank you, Wes. Meta?
Yeah, one of the things I was going to say about the safety discussion is there are these things that happen with our brains where we don't really perceive logarithms uh, in certain things very well. We have like a logarithmic perception on things. So something getting safer and safer and safer to the point where somebody might be like, well, I have plenty of friends or family who have a car. I don't know anybody in my immediate circle who's died from a car accident. And then there's people who maybe know that, oh, one of my friends and family was saved because of a Tesla. That converts all those folks into buyers. Many of these car companies, they at some point, I guess, realize there's this perfect place where you can have just enough safety, where people are safe. You don't have to spend more money on making the car safer, and you can advertise it as really safe. And they just kind of stopped. There was nothing preventing these cars from being safer for a very long time, except for the fact that they would get a 5-star rating, and being any safer didn't really help them advertising wise. Tesla didn't do that, which is like really good, true engineering principle of doing good for humanity as opposed to just like trying to make the most money. And I think the reason why people don't understand this all the way is because it's the equivalent of like you have an insurance provider, and the insurance provider has done really good at customer service and really good at taking care of you and all that stuff, but you've never needed to use the insurance. Safety is like that. It's a law of large numbers kind of thing. People don't necessarily appreciate it or understand it. And the fact that Tesla still prioritizes it is a really big deal, even if people don't fully understand it.
Omar, why do you think legacy automakers haven't prioritized safety as much as Tesla has?
Well, I mean, they run a very low margin competitive business. They don't spend billions of dollars on training compute to train a AI foundation model. They say, "Oh, good, we already got 5 stars. That's good. 5 out of 5. Okay, that's fine. It doesn't really matter if people are dying. Okay, we got 5 out of 5." And Tesla has a different way of thinking. They say, "Okay, can we do 6?" Like, honestly, you said that Grok said over the year updates was number 4. It's arguably up there for number 1 potentially, either that or the structural safety. And, I'll give you a really good example from the video. So the government has these standard crash tests that they do, right? You got the, front crash test, the side impact. They got their standard tests. So every vehicle that's tested is tested with those standard crash tests. But what Tesla will actually do is they actually continue crash testing it after you buy the car. And they'll send an over the air update. They can change anything about the car. And also, first of all, just being able to send an over the air update to change things in the car, you need a high level of vertical integration. You can't do that if all the parts in your cars are from different companies. It's going to be hard to update the software and get them to work in sync when you have, 50 different companies providing different drivers. So they actually have the vertical integration to update anything. And even after you buy the car, they're going to continue crash testing it, and they can make adjustments and say, okay, is there anything we could do better? More than that, every car has a cell connection in it. So they not only continue crash testing in their crash testing lab, they get data back in real time from how vehicles are actually crashing in the real world, from real crashes, right? And they get footage of the crash. They get all the telemetry from the crash. It's updated over LTE as much as possible. And they can actually look at that real world crash data and see if there's anything they could have done better. So they have a video on YouTube about this where they say, look, we saw in the real world that there's a certain type of test that's a little bit different than the standard crash test. People are getting hit kind of in the front side, And we think there's a little bit of an adjustment we could do here based on these real world crashes we're seeing, which go above and beyond what the standard crash test offers. And we're actually going to optimize for that. So they then went and they optimized for that and they prepared a software update. Everything looked good. And they sent it out to the fleet. So you as a Model Y owner or whatever, you got this car and you just get an update. It probably isn't even called out, but that code has been updated. So in the event that you do get in a crash, you have that extra level of protection. Things like the seatbelts pretensioners going off automatically, that type of thing. So I think as consumers begin to evolve this, they'll understand that over the air updates aren't just cool and they're not just fun and they don't just give you new features. It's actually kind of a foundational safety feature. And let's not forget, with all these recalls, with most recalls, you got to bring your car in. With Tesla, they can just fix any potential issue in a fraction of the time. Before you even get the letter telling you about the issue, it's fixed. So I think you could make the case that over the air updates is sort of number one on the list, and nobody can really do it anywhere close to what Tesla can do.
Sounds like Meta agrees with you. Meta, do you think over-the-air updates are number one on Tesla's safety list?
I would say number one is probably the culture that the company has. And then from that, you get over-the-air updates, but you also get the fact that every accident they analyze it. I think there was like a video with Lars in it where he was talking about how they analyze every accident, they try to see how they can improve it, and then they make physical changes as necessary to reinforce the areas where necessary, and also to remove weight where it's not necessary. So you could think of it like they're just doing it for safety, or you could say they're just doing it to reduce weight where they don't need it. But the end result is they're making it safer and cheaper. And I think that's a really big part of this. And on the second part about like sending these software updates, they also did it to reduce injury to pedestrians and to other people on the road. It's not just about uh, selling Teslas or the people in the cars. They're just trying to do the right thing overall for everybody.
Thank you. Wes, I know I asked you a related question earlier, but at your time at Tesla, can you share any more specifics around Tesla's approach to safety design and testing, maybe?
Yeah, so we had a set of requirements from the IIHS and NHTSA that we had to meet to get certain scores. And we looked at the trajectory over the years and how these had changed. And they were just kind of starting to adopt these new requirements that utilized new sensors like cameras and radar. And so we looked at that and said, okay, what is the path that they're on? Well, the path that they're on is, trying to get these to some level that you could say, yeah, these are definitely saving people's lives or reducing crash energy or causing less permanent injuries. Okay, great. What do we want to do? Well, we want to make the car not hit anything ever. And so we just extrapolated that and said, okay, well, that's the path that we're on. So we designed the autopilot ECU to be updatable in a vacuum. So you wouldn't be able to do this in any other vehicle back then, and you still can't now. And to the best of my knowledge, there's no vehicle that does this. But you can update the autopilot ECU as much as you want forever on the vehicle without hesitation. Like, Meta was saying, Tesla has never bricked a vehicle in the field so that it's undrivable. And I can tell a story about how we developed the bootloader on the radar unit, and we actually did brick a couple of radar units back in the day, but the vehicle in and of itself is designed to be updated at infinitum. So in the limit, whenever the vehicle is designed in the limit to be updated as much as possible, whenever there's a new algorithm or something that will improve the safety of the vehicle in the sensor suite. So we took the path that the testing agencies were on and just extrapolated it into the limit. And that's how the vehicle was designed. And this was evident physically as well back as late as many years ago as 2013 when Model S was tested by IHS. There's this one test that they do where they have this huge metal plate and they try to crush the vehicle until the cabin, the passenger cabin deforms, and this huge metal plate comes down on top of the car, and they start to squish it, and they look for this deformation. Well, they continued to do this with Model S and did it as much as they possibly could, and that steel plate cracked, and they broke the test machine. And this is public information. I was just about to post a link, but this is how the Tesla vehicles are designed. And the vehicle like largely won't roll over because the center of gravity is below the wheels. So it's nearly impossible to roll the vehicle. But if it did, and it did get turtled, it was sitting on its top, it would not crush, because you could take 5 Model S's and put it on top and it still wouldn't crush it. So this is the level, both electrically, software, and physical, that the car is designed to meet not only what the IIHS is doing now, or NHTSA, but in the limit, however far off they go, the vehicles will always meet or exceed these requirements, because that's how it's designed.
Yeah, it's almost like there should be another level for Tesla above 5 stars.
Yeah, and I think Omar might have said this, but safety is not a means to an end for Tesla. It is the end, but it's pretty obvious to me that for nearly every other car company, and maybe Rivian is thinking along the same lines as Tesla, but almost every car company, their end is getting 5 stars. As long as they get that, they're happy. But Tesla isn't happy with 5 stars. Tesla is only happy when they've done as much as they can for safety. And so that greatly exceeds 5 stars in almost every test category that they do.
Meta, would you be able to talk to us about some people who are not familiar with Tesla as much as folks in this space are concerned. They hear all this FUD about fire risk of the battery pack. What
Sure.
steps does Tesla take, or maybe Wes or Meta or Omar? What steps does Tesla take that ensures the battery pack's fire risk is as low as possible?
They've done a number of different things, starting from like the foam that they use between the cells. So you know how the batteries are cylindrical, and if you stack them together, they form kind of a honeycomb. In each of the gaps, they put a fire retardant uh, foam, which both helps with structure, but also helps preventing the spread in the event that one of the cells were to overheat. They used to actually put casings around them all and put like different modules, but it turns out that's not really that necessary. So now with the new Model Y's structural battery pack, they don't actually do that. However, by having every single thing in its own cell, you actually contain the fire from spreading so that it doesn't just go everywhere all at once. A lot of people think of the battery as one giant battery, but it's actually a lot of individual cells. So if one cell were to catch on fire, if you will, that would take a while for it to ignite and pass through all the other cells. And that allows, like, there are stories about like the vehicle saying, get out of the car. And it took about 30 minutes after that for the vehicle to actually catch on fire. You don't get that with a gas car, right? A gas car just blows up. The other big important part here is Tesla charge their cars so that they're top heavy versus bottom heavy, which is basically to say when you charge your batteries to 100, they're all at the same 100% of their charge, and then they start to offload their charge from there. When they're bottom heavy, it means that they're all at equal when they're at zero. The reason why this is important is because the odds that you're going to charge your car to 100 and leave it plugged in is much higher than the odds you're going to let your car drive down to zero. So even if you did let your car drive down to zero, in those situations, the total energy potential in the vehicle is pretty low. So you're just going to like damage some cells, but you're not going to have a fire situation. Whereas if you were bottom heavy, then you might have a situation where 99.9% of your batteries have charged up and they're satiated, but that 1% of batteries or 0.1% of batteries has a little bit more where it can continue to draw electricity. And because it's continuing to draw electricity, your full batteries are going to get overcharged and that could spark a fire. So there's a lot of these small decisions that they've made along the way, which do make it harder for them to like, you know, align everything and ship their batteries. But these are all really good reasons why the batteries are safer. And I think even when they talked about the 4680s, the thing that's limiting the size, why they're saying it's the perfect size, is in part also because they want to know what is the energy potential per cell. Because you do want to maximize it, but you also want to make sure you don't make one giant battery.
Omar, when you're telling potential buyers, when you're speaking with your friends, colleagues, families who are looking to buy a Tesla, how do you approach them about Tesla safety, or does the topic even come up unless if they ask?
Hmm. Well, today it didn't really come up. I think the fire risk is an important one because you kind of hear this narrative that, oh, okay, your EV's going to catch fire. But you look at the actual data, and what the actual data shows is that EVs actually catch fire 10 times less per mile traveled. So, I mean, whenever you have sort of a high energy, high density energy source, whether it's gasoline or a battery, and you've got moving vehicles, there are things that can happen sometimes. You get a crash or something where the vehicle catches on fire. But unlike gasoline, which explodes, right? If you take gas and you throw a match in it, what's going to happen? It's going to explode, right? So batteries don't really explode. Have you ever seen a battery explode? You hold your phone all the time, right? You're probably some people holding their phone right now. So, I mean, there was that Samsung Galaxy incident, but generally phones don't just explode. So when we talk about batteries catching on fire, typically you're talking about a thermal runaway event. And this can happen if there's like a short in the battery pack. That short circuit causes a lot of heat, and then that causes the battery pack to eventually sort of start melting, and then there can be a fire. And that fire can be more difficult to put out than a normal gas car fire. You often need a special foam, but firefighters are now sort of being trained on that all across the country. But it doesn't really explode. It slowly starts to heat up and then maybe catch fire. So if you're in a crash where the battery is severely damaged, it's not really going to explode and kill you. It'll very slowly maybe start smoking and then catch on fire. And, most of the time, nothing's going to happen. But they've actually put a firewall in between the passenger compartment and the battery as well. So even if there is some sort of fire issue, you should be able to get out pretty calmly and safely and not worry about your car exploding with you in it. And when you just look at the number of incidents, EVs actually catch fire 10 times less. Like it's right there in the name. Internal combustion engine. Not buying an EV because you're worried about fire is like saying, "Oh, I'm worried about radiation living in New Mexico. I'm going to go live in Fukushima in the site of the abandoned reactor." Uh, I think you kind of have the risk about this backwards, right? The real fire risk is ICE vehicles. And you see recalls on ICE vehicles all the time where they say, hey, don't park your vehicle in your garage. We might burn your house down. And people just accept this. It doesn't make the news. But, the EVs are very advanced, right? They have ways of detecting these things, stopping power to the pack. Um, They have a way to cut the power to the pack if you're in a crash or anything like that. So obviously, I've been driving an EV for 5 years now. My dad has had a Model S since 2013. It's been more than 10 years. All our family members have them. It's 10 times more rare than a gas car catching fire. So if your gas car hasn't caught fire, you are probably not going to see your EV catch fire. And that's another huge safety benefit. I mean, nobody wants their car to burn down.
I think Omar said it really well. Um, there's one thing that I worked a tiny bit with the BMS team, and the thing that was paramount to them was that every individual cell was managed at the cell level, and they could detect at the cell level if any thermal runaway event was starting to occur at the cell level. And that was, to my knowledge, that even to this day, when an OEM ships a vehicle with, you know, like 1,000 different batteries in it, they don't do that. They do it at the either at the pack level or at the individual compartment level, because the batteries are organized into compartments, and so it's just a software kind of nightmare for companies that aren't software native and aren't really good at software to do things at this level. They depend on the third party manufacturer that is selling them the pack to do this. And they're not as interested in managing things at this level. So it's one thing that I point to when somebody asks me about battery fires, or anybody asks me about battery fires. And I'm like, yeah, Tesla just does this at such a low level that a thermal runaway event is next to impossible in a Tesla, unless the battery pack is pierced in a way that pierces many of the cells, and the pack is overall deformed, and the vehicle loses 12-volt capability to continually monitor and manage the thermal state of the batteries. Then you can potentially have thermal runaway, but outside of that, it's it's impossible. So all of those things have to happen, and for a Tesla, for that to happen is next to impossible, because the chassis is so unbelievably strong. It can resist crazy amounts of energy hitting it at the sides or front or back, so that the battery pack is never deformed or pierced in that way, or the 12-volt system is somehow incapacitated so it can't manage the thermal state of the batteries.
Yeah, another thing that's important is that the majority of Teslas now are using LFP batteries. And the LFP batteries basically never catch fire. They're extremely safe. So the LFP batteries have a much higher thermal runaway threshold, meaning they have to get much, much hotter to sustain a reaction. The chemical structure, the lower energy density, um, their chemistry doesn't release oxygen during breakdown, which makes it hard for a fire to start. And they've got a lot of safety features. I mean, BYD has done demos where they've just put a nail straight through the battery, and you can literally pierce the cells themselves, and it's just extremely stable. And more Teslas are now sold with LFP than without LFP. So the default battery pack you get is just extremely, extremely safe.
There's a lot to be said about the BMS, but if you recall back when the cell versus pouch versus single battery or single cell, which is not technically a battery because it's only one cell, that debate, everybody thought Tesla was picking the wrong design because it was heavy, there was too much extra material, and then they decided to put it on the bottom, which obviously increased safety by moving the weight to the bottom. So it just shows us, at a high level, the things we can understand are they take an engineering challenge and they find a way to make it useful and even safer because the weight was higher, versus other companies where cost comes first. the pouches were cheaper, the cells were not. And that's just a big cultural difference.
All right. Well, after all those reasons, then why do you think nobody knows about it? Why do you think it doesn't come up in conversations? People don't appear to be basing their vehicle purchase decisions on Tesla's superior safety. And how can we change that?
I think people don't think about rare events. People don't really talk about their home insurance or their insurance plans or things like that. Like they'll talk about other parts, maybe, but we have a tendency to not notice uh, the bad things that happen rarely. And we also don't notice when things that are bad stop happening somewhat frequently, right? So we have a confirmation bias, but we don't really have a lack of confirmation bias as humans. And just like today, there was a post about how on V12, somebody after 6 days didn't really experience phantom braking. I was trying to talk to people and understand, like, have they experienced phantom braking? And someone said they haven't really even experienced it on V11. And I think unless you actively try to recognize that, it could have been a very long time before people go, oh, wait, that thing that was annoying stopped happening. The fact that your car is keeping you safe, even if it's like lane drifting a little bit, even if it's braking a little bit earlier, or it's annoying you so that you don't like follow cars very closely. We have this confirmation bias maybe that makes us think, oh, I'm already a safe driver. The car is just like a little bit pedantic. But in reality, the way you're driving, if you kept driving that way, would have higher probability of accidents than if you didn't drive that way. And unfortunately, people don't. I don't think people are going to notice that until the government changes the fact that they hide the safety statistics behind these star ratings. Like for a new car, I get why they have crash test safety. Why doesn't NHTSA release actual safety stats for vehicles that have already been out?
Yeah, there was a bit of a back and forth between NHTSA and Tesla, right? When Tesla started publishing that chart about lowest probability of a serious injury. Clearly, all four
You're,
Teslas were the best, the safest vehicles ever produced in history on that chart. And didn't NHTSA come back and say, please don't use it or something along those lines?
yeah, NHTSA didn't like them advertising it as that was NHTSA's data, which is so annoying because it is NHTSA's data.
So then why did they do that? Why did NHTSA try to get Tesla to stop using it?
My understanding is NHTSA just wanted to have like a bar that companies had to clear, and when they cleared it, they were all the same.
Yeah.
And I think that is philosophically wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, what I agree with you. So then what's their reasoning?
My guess is because their feeling is they need to give companies a bar they have to meet instead of making it a race and a competition to who can make the cars the safest, which I would argue is
Yeah.
what is best for humans. Yeah. I think it's just maybe money, politics.
No, I
I
mean, I
don't know.
think what they said was just that, look, we're not trying to do this to that level of precision where you can rank them and say, oh, this one's 0.72, this one's 0.76. Let me go to that. We just got the simple 5 stars, right? We don't, have the ability to scientifically test these or something and say, this one's better than that one. We don't want manufacturers now fighting with us over making their score higher or lower compared to everybody else. We just want to make it simple. Okay, this is 5 stars, this is 5 stars. Now, of course, every 5 star vehicle is not equal, every 4 star vehicle is not equal, but for whatever reason, they just wanted to keep that consumer facing system simple for consumers to understand.
If that's the case, why not do some system where you say the top N vehicles will get 5 stars, the next most will get four, and so on and so forth? I think it came down to there was an understanding that if a car did not have 5 stars, almost no one would buy it. But if it had 5 stars, it was a stamp of approval that it was safe enough.
Weren't they thinking about maybe adjusting the methodology? Whether it was adding a 6 star or making it out of 10. I thought there were some rumors that they were going to change that.
We need a shrug emoji because I don't know. Sorry.
We do need more emojis, and we also need the recordings to show the emojis.
So I'll add my 2 cents is that I haven't heard that rumor, but a little bit of background is that Omar's totally right. Their tests are not designed to that level of precision. So their tests are designed so that they can say that you're definitely above their 5-star threshold, but they can't say where you exist above that to a level of precision where they can rank different results. So that's the level of precision is just 5 stars. The thing that I find super interesting though is that for vehicles that get 5 stars, my thought is that there is enough data to get a lower level or maybe a better level of precision to the safety of those vehicles. And you can see that in the crash data of how many miles these vehicles have been driven and how often they get into crashes. And so that data is available, and that's a much higher level of precision to show the likelihood of getting a permanent injury in those vehicles. And I'll also add that many of these vehicles are not actually tested by these test agencies. The OEMs actually self-test and submit the results on their own, and then it's up to the IHS and the NHTSA to audit them when they feel necessary. And sometimes when they're audited, they're found to not be relevant. The test results are invalidated. And so the automakers have to then come back and make changes to their vehicle, and they're given some amount of time to do that to get their vehicles back up to what they said that they were. We could see part of this in the Dieselgate scandal. That's the process by which that was found out. So I just want to stress that, like, Tesla does these tests, they submit, but the NHTSA and the IHS, they do test Tesla vehicles because now they're, some of the largest by volume vehicles shipped on the planet. So they tend to test those more often.
Meta, do you think there is a way for Tesla to, I guess what would be the most cost efficient way of getting the word out that Teslas are superior in safety?
Honestly, the most cost-effective way would probably be for them to try and do a powwow or whatever it is with the largest insurance companies, show them the fact that it is much safer, and find a way to convince them to drop the expected probability of cost associated with the very extreme scenarios like death and those kinds of things for Tesla vehicle owners. And I think that is part of why Tesla insurance was even attempted in the first place. But if they can meaningfully move the needle on insurance for folks, that's really like the biggest, most tangible way for people to understand how safety improves their lives beyond just being safe. Like, obviously, surviving and living is a big deal, but a lot of people, you know, can't quantify that. But 10, 20, $30 more in your pocket every month is more tangible to people.
Yeah, even I agree with you. Even the quarterly reports that Tesla was publishing, very simple, one paragraph, autopilot being safer. It just wasn't quoted, discussed. No one knew about it. And I looked at it every quarter, but even Tesla stopped publishing them. I asked Grok.
And if,
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and if you believe your vehicles are the safest out there and you're confident about that, then it's hard to explain it to the masses, in my opinion, but it is probably going to be easier for them to explain to actuaries and folks like that. Like you kind of want to get it to a point where insurance companies are saying, I provide life insurance to this person. Do they drive a Tesla? Because if they're primarily spending their time in Teslas, their life insurance cost might be a little bit lower because the probability of death is lower, right? Like, how do you push it further and further to the folks that have a cross at the intersection between an understanding of math and extreme stats and affecting the uh, monetary or other lifestyle factors for humans or for customers?
I mean, I guess, Cybertruck takes it to another level. Like, you could just take a Cybertruck and crash it into an F-150 and see what happens. It would only cost you, what, $200,000 to make that, and just put the video on social media.
Yeah, I think you're saying like you could have you can make a visceral thing where it's like a emotional thing for folks. But I think ultimately, if the resistance to buying is monetary or the resistance to buying is uh, a fear that is about
No,
supercharging,
I'm not.
the safety is not
I'm
going to convince
focusing
them.
specifically on safety. Not trying to sell more vehicles, just trying to get the word out that Teslas are fundamentally and supported by data way safer than any other vehicle on the road. Just trying to change the perception that Tesla doesn't even come up in those discussions, that in the top 10 lists of safest brands, even though the data, proves that Teslas are safer.
Are you sure that that is the general
Yeah,
perception, or is that just because of like the JD Power kind of stuff?
no, just ask anybody. Go around, ask 100 people. I talk to a lot of people about Tesla all the time. Ask them, what are your top 3 brands that you believe are safest? And Tesla doesn't come up. Never. And so, what would be the most cost efficient way of changing perception and aligning it with facts?
Ads, I think. I don't think it's really something that spreads through word of mouth. You don't go to a party and go, "Hey,
Yeah,
did you
exactly.
know did you know batteries are actually 10 times less likely to catch on fire than like gas?" Okay. People will be like, "What?" So, like they've got some really great marketing material because every time a crash is prevented, they send the video up to themselves. So they literally have this massive data set of examples of crashes that they literally prevented. Oh, look, here's a guy who was going to get hit by a car. Here's a crowd of people that was supposed to get hit by a car. Here's a guy who was supposed to drive into a lake. They didn't drive into the lake. So that should be an ad. Just show those videos and then bring the guy on, because everybody's got those stories. I just told you about, test drive, autopilot, it did something. I mean, you don't have to drive a Tesla for long before forward collision warning tips you off to something that could have been a crash. Lane departure avoidance stops something. Automatic emergency braking stops something. So just get stories of people. There are like, go get that woman who her husband tried to kill her and her kid by driving off a cliff. Like, go pay her to be, just come and be like, yeah, my husband went crazy and drove us off a cliff. We walked out without a scratch. I'm buying another Tesla. Because that's what they say. You see people in those crashes. When my followers just DM me and he said, "Oh my God, I got rear ended. And I got rear ended so hard I hit the car in front of me." In a lot of other cars, that could have been an accident, just one moment where someone rear ends you and it ruins your life. You're living with pain for the rest of your life. You're injured. Or worse, you're dead. Or even worse, one of your loved ones is dead. It can happen to any of us at any time. And this car that rear ended him was like totally smashed. The Model Y, like barely a dent, honestly. It just held up extremely well for all the reasons we talked about, the structural safety, the rigidity, the preparation, the crash testing. So that's what I think it should be. It's just got to be, you have to hear directly from those people who were in a crash or who had a crash prevented, and just let them explain. So many times I hear these stories and people go, I'm buying another Tesla after they finish, telling the story about the crash.
Yeah, that's a good way to amplify. Like the person whose life is saved is telling their friends and family. But if you can give them a megaphone, you can really amplify it. And that then a megaphone could be through advertising on TV or radio or whatever. But they could also find some other viral ways of doing it. I don't know what that has to be, but like a while back, I'm trying to remember the name of the DJ, but there was some DJ who was pretty big and he fell asleep going back. Like this is like somebody who like headlined at like Coachella and stuff like that. And he fell asleep in his vehicle driving back, and the car kind of pulled over to the side. Granted, this was before Vision. I think this was Mobileye in the vehicle at the time, but he kind of pointed it out, and I think he had put it on Twitter and stuff, and that went viral, and a lot of people like started to understand that. I think I hate to put it this way, but until somebody who has like a really big megaphone naturally, or is provided a very large megaphone, the word's not going to get out. And it has to be like Omar said, like you could definitely go to the people who've had those crazy stories and give them a megaphone.
I mean, they have all the data. They literally have footage of the incident. They know who it was. Hit them up and say, hey, you want a discount on a new Tesla? Just appear in a little ad for us and just tell the story of what happened. That's all. We'll give you a discount.
And that's something that the news companies could play and get some clicks. It'd be interesting if they like got every single time somebody was in a near accident, they popped something up on the screen and said, "Hey, can we use that footage?" And if they give permission, they could just make like a 24/7 looping feed of all the near accidents that have been like, prevented. Maybe have somebody review it just for sanity's sake. And then, provide content to these news companies that are just so starved for content. They don't write their own stuff. Just start providing the content to them so that they can do their lazy job and just try and get advertising money on content you write for them, as opposed to writing FUD about you. Because we all know Tesla in the article is going to get eyeballs. Just try to get it to be towards the positive side.
I asked Grok to effectively realign public perception with the facts and communicate that Teslas are the safest vehicles ever produced. Tesla management can implement the following cost-efficient strategies. One, leverage social media. Utilize social media platforms to share safety-related content, such as videos, infographics, and testimonials, as you guys have been saying. Encourage Tesla owners to share their experiences and safety features with their followers to create a buzz around the brand.
What if they did a competition where all the vehicles that they detect were in a near accident, if those people gave like a testimonial or posted something, they would send them like a free shirt that says, "I was in a car accident and I survived because of Tesla," or something along those lines.
Interesting. Engage with media
I
is so Omar said the first one, testimonials. Meta said the fourth one, engage with media, reach out to journalists, bloggers, other media professionals to share information about Tesla's safety features. By the way, Tesla has all these accounts on X, AI account, manufacturing account. Is there a safety account?
Not that I've
Right?
seen.
There's a charging account. There is Optimus account, but there's no Tesla safety account. And like Omar said, they have all the data.
They really can also work with governments and insurance companies and other bodies that could almost be lobbied to say, hey, look, these vehicles are so much safer than other vehicles. You need to increase your safety standards. Could you imagine what would happen if the bar for 5-star was raised and all the other vehicles had to start competing on that bar as opposed to being in the same category? I think that would really improve things for everybody on the road.
I agree with you, but good luck getting that through.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way to lobby. There are companies that are clearly successful at it, right?
Yeah. Number 5 by Grok. Collaborate with influencers. Get them to create spaces on a Sunday night. Talk about safety.
Why do you think insurance companies aren't taking advantage of this? Is it because of the knowledge gap with the consumer willing to pay more even though their vehicle is safer?
Well, the insurance company doesn't care how safe it is. They care how much they're going to have to pay to fix it. And let's be real, these cars are fast. They're easy to crash if you're being stupid. You're probably not going to die if you get in a crash because it's a very safe vehicle. But guess who's still on the hook for it? The insurance company. So, you have Tesla insurance and stuff. You can get discounts for using FSD, for having a lower safety score. I mean, sorry, a higher safety score. So there is sort of that aspect to the insurance where you can get a lower insurance rate, but you'd really expect that to continue to come down over time as crashes get less and less frequent. They say their goal is to make a car that's impossible to crash. But today, it's not impossible to crash. People very much can still crash them, and they do. And you're probably more likely to go for like a crazy joyride in a Tesla than in a Prius.
Do you guys think we're going to see a car that actually never crashes as the goal? As it's their goal? Ashok talked about it on X. Omar just mentioned it. When do you think we have a
Yeah.
car that actually doesn't crash?
E15.
Yeah, it seems like something that is, less than 5 years away. And of course, it's never going to be 100%, but it should be possible to build a car where it's virtually impossible to crash it just because it's looking in every direction all the time and it can react very quickly, even if you aren't. So, given a sufficiently strong understanding of the world, it should never crash into anything. And I mean, it's already doing this to some extent. It's not going to prevent 100% of crashes, but they've already got automatic emergency braking, lane departure avoidance, all that stuff. So they've kind of started in this direction, but the real sort of automatic collision avoidance features they're doing are sort of next level. Like the demo they gave is you should be able to pass out flooring the accelerator, and your car still won't crash into anything. And they showed a simulation of this where someone falls asleep and they floor the accelerator and the car just kind of keeps moving around but doesn't hit anything, just sort of powered by the occupancy network.
Meta, what was your answer earlier?
The question,
When are we going to see a car
oh, I was jokingly saying V15.
V15?
Like if each major version it has a main criteria, I could see eventually there being a major version where the goal of that, you've already achieved robotaxi, you've done off-roading, you're fully L5, you're not dependent on maps. Where do you go from there? From there, you say, okay, what is even the longest tail of accidents that are leading to fender benders or any kind of collision, and let's try and resolve those. Even if that means that the vehicle has to move out of the way because the vehicle coming from behind you is at fault, which again, you can't prevent 100% collisions, right? Like if you're
Not
parked
with that attitude.
and there's a vehicle in front of you and behind you. Well, if there's a car in front of you and behind you and somebody just coming to
Go
collide
up.
into you, unless your car can
Yeah, you
fly,
hop.
it's gonna get hit.
He said Rosa was going to do that. What are you laughing? He said he
I
was going
guess, yeah.
to.
You know what? You're right. You could get the SpaceX package and then they could do it
Yeah.
that way.
I mean, you're going to have to do that, right? To get to zero.
Or alternatively, you get to zero by turning every car on the road into a robotaxi.
Well, that's not going to happen for so many years. That's not going to happen for
I
two
guess
decades.
I guess a bicyclist could always come and collide into your car too.
So seriously though, like engineering from, I mean, we have all these incredible smart people on the board right now. From an engineering perspective, what are some of the innovative ways that Tesla will have to do to get to zero accidents?
That is the goal of robotaxi, right? Like if you look at the Waymos, right? I think they presented a safety report where if they removed all collisions below, I think it was like either 1 mile per hour or 5 miles per hour, something like that, the it was nearly almost no accidents. And it kind of shows that like a lot of those accidents were probably like touches happening from people parking around the car or something. So it really should be the goal of robotaxi is no accidents. That is the March of Nines.
So you're saying we don't have to go up. The Waymo already is there, basically.
Well, it's not everywhere. So clearly they haven't done highways, and highways do have a lot of accidents.
Okay, let me ask you a more direct question. Do you think cars on the road will have to communicate with each other for us to get to zero accidents? And I'm not just saying nearly zero, I'm saying zero accidents.
I think as long as you have two ways to get there. In order to have all the cars communicate to each other, are humans allowed to override those cars? And if they are allowed to override those cars, is the car at some point supposed to ignore the human's input? Because a car could be parked and a human could try and go and crash into the other car. And if the expectation is that car is going to not allow it, I would claim that there is a reality where all the cars talk to each other, they all follow some kind of protocol, and they all somehow magically don't do this. But a more realistic reality is that you replace all the vehicles with robo-taxi, safe vehicles, and the expectation becomes if there's ever an accident, the punishment's kind of high. There's a lot of incentive to not get into accidents. And then you actually get to zero accidents because now it's monetarily incentivized. You don't need the cars to talk to each other, and you can just kind of solve it from there. There's nothing fundamental that you must be able to talk to each other, in my opinion, to solve this problem.
What about just think of Chuck's left turn and put a wall in the corner. I actually have a turn like that in Austin. Um, like you really have to creep forward quite a bit to see around the corner of the house. Wouldn't it be
The problem with
helpful if there was a Tesla on the other side of that house communicating with the Tesla I'm in about the cars coming from that corner?
the problem is now you have to also communicate with all bicyclists, all dogs, all humans. Right? When we talk about accidents and car crashes, it's not just about other cars.
Well, I mean, it's better than no communication, right? If there's a Tesla on the other side and it's communicating with the Tesla I'm in.
No, I don't think so, because the problem with trying to have cars communicate with each other is you either have to come up with a band which allows all these cars to broadcast to each other, which means that communication needs to go through the wall to get to your other car, which it may not get. And that could lead it to having a false sense of confidence and driving even faster into the accident. Or you have to go through a relay up through the sky and back down. And again, either a tower or a satellite, there's going to add a lot of latency, and you could have packet drop, you could have
Yeah, there's
communication
no way
gaps.
you'd be able
But
to do it with a satellite. I mean,
right, and now
what's the
picture you're in the basement.
fastest you can go up to a Starlink and then come down? I mean, I guess that's not public information, but like physically, what's the fastest you can
It's
get through?
fast. I mean, we're talking like probably less than 50 milliseconds.
But still, that's eternity in an accident situation, right?
50
No, it's not the
milliseconds is very
speed.
fast.
Yeah, it's not the
I
speed.
mean, look, you cannot rely on this information, right? Because you're never going to have every car in the world. Like, people are obsessed with this idea for some reason. Oh, we need to get the cars to talk to each other. Then, it's going to work. No, we don't need to get the cars to fucking talk to each other. Actually, the FCC allocated spectrum to the industry for vehicle to vehicle communication. And then literally nobody used it for decades. So they said, "All right, fuck you guys. We're literally taking the spectrum back and we're giving it to Wi-Fi." So that, that happened. They got rid of that. So I believe that vehicles will share information with each other. They already are. Like, for example, Teslas share where the rough patches of the road are so the air suspension can be updated automatically. That's kind of a form of communication with each other over the internet. I expect that to continue to evolve over the internet, over the cell connection. And that's going to be done with the understanding that the cell connection is somewhat spotty. It may not be there. You don't depend on it, but it's a nice to have. Because any car could come that's not communicating with the network, any person, any deer, you still need to have this foundational ability to never crash, even without that. But if there are other Teslas nearby and they can give you some hints, hey, there's a big truck coming or whatever, then yeah, they can communicate with each other over the internet at, very low latency and probably get some information. I think things like construction, roads that are closed, things like that, all stuff that the cars can communicate with each other about. But you don't want to overly rely on it to the detriment of your model actually being able to handle itself.
Yeah, I would agree. Generally speaking, things that you can't possibly physically see because of even like the curvature of the earth, however extreme you want to take this, you're really far away, there's construction happening, something along those lines. I think we all agree map data updates like that, making that real time, totally useful. For cars to talk to other cars, we're removing radar from the car because it's unnecessary sensor fusion. I don't think you wanna do that. I think if you're gonna do anything like these cars need to talk to each other, really explore if sensors have been fully used as much as possible first. Because you're gonna have the sensor fusion problem anyway, and now you're potentially opening yourself up to external attacks, bad data being broadcast, all that kind of stuff. It's just it sounds like a nightmare to me to open the vehicle up to any broadcast telling it what to do.
All right. So you guys aren't too hot on the idea, huh?
Yeah, you don't need it. What you need is to be able to look at the scene and understand it and not crash from that. And it's absolutely possible. I mean, it's so clear to me that we're trending towards a world where people say, "What's a car crash?" And our kids and grandkids will just stare at us and go, "You mean cars just used to crash into each other all the time?" I mean, I go, and like literally every time I leave my house, I see a car crash somewhere. It's crazy. Anytime you do a sufficiently long drive. So, I was just driving last night back home on the 405 and there's this huge traffic jam. Everybody's time wasted, like 100 people, their time just completely wasted. They're stuck in this jam. And then, sure enough, there's some guy just stopped in the middle of the road. He hit some other car. Then the traffic jam continues. Okay, there was an even bigger crash on the other side of the road. Two cars just flipped over, completely destroyed, fire trucks surrounding the scene, police surrounding the scene, and everybody on my freeway slowing down to look at it on the other side. And then once we passed it, they kept going, right? So this is like the kind of stuff we deal with: injury, death, property damage, time wasted, right? Like, just imagine if you tried to measure like the GDP loss to society from, well, I guess it technically adds to GDP, but the cost of all of these, things, it's enormous, right? So it would be just a huge thing if we had a second set of eyes in every car that was AI. When the human messes up, the AI catches it. So that's really why the EU and others are moving to mandate this. And I expect the United States and others to follow in mandating these features. They're starting to mandate AEB, which is kind of like, why have you not mandated AEB yet? There's really no excuse not to. EU has already done AEB and a bunch of other things. Um, I believe, you know, you literally will not be able to sell a car without really powerful AI, I think, by the end of the decade.
Omar, how many safety features do you think you can count off the top of your head without looking it up? No asking Grok, Gemini, or anybody else.
I mean, there's a lot of different things.
All right, let's see. Let's see. What's coming up? No Googling. Okay, no Googling. We're going to go one by one by one. All right. Wes, top safety feature. Go ahead. Name one Tesla safety feature.
Um, well, FSD is now a safety
Just one.
feature.
Just one. Okay. FSD. No Googling. Omar, your turn.
I think the acceleration can be a safety feature. When shit gets real, you can get out of the way really quickly.
All right. I'm keeping an eye on live chat. If somebody says it twice, okay, you guys let me know. All right. So Wes said FST. Omar said what?
The acceleration.
Acceleration. Wes.
Well, you
We have
want
to
me to
go
say another
faster.
one?
At this pace, this is gonna last like until the morning. There's a lot of features. When Josh is coming up, if anybody wants to join the game, just request to speak. Wes, go ahead.
So, misapplication of throttle. That was
All right.
one that
Oh,
was, yes. Yep,
misapplication mitigation.
that's
Yeah.
it.
All right. Josh, what's your feature?
Hey, I just throw this out there. Tesla's stability control is unmatched. I drove that thing, I don't know, 1,500 miles on the way home on bald summer tires through the snow, and it was unbelievable.
All right. Meta, your turn.
The BMS.
Battery management system. Okay. Omar, your turn.
Sentry mode and dash cam.
Sentry mode and dash cam. Yeah, that's a good one.
When you're
Wes.
in an accident, you can get that footage, show it to the insurance agency. Really helpful in safety incidents.
Yeah. Live chat folks, don't give any ideas to the speakers. No ideas to the speakers. I will put you on timeout. You're just there to monitor if somebody says it twice because I'm not going to catch it. Wes?
Torque vectoring.
All right. Josh?
I was literally going to say that, but yeah, the airbag programming, I would say.
All right. Meta?
The second ASIC as a backup to the FSD.
Great. Tizali?
One pedal driving. As soon as you let off the accelerator, and if you see an imminent crash, it's already slowing down. The faster you let off the accelerator, the faster it slows down.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
Omar?
kind of ridiculous that cars don't stop by default after you get rid of this. They just kind of go and crash into things.
Exactly.
Omar?
The front crumple zone.
Nice. Josh?
Yeah. Oh man, these are good ones. But no, I would go with. I mean, Tesla's ABS again. Just their software is untouched.
Okay. Meta?
The redundant camera for the front for FSD.
Okay. Wes?
Front side collision AEB.
We're getting really specific here. Like seriously, this is gonna take. Tizali?
The seat belts that will pre-tension before a crash even happens.
That's my favorite one,
Yeah,
honestly.
I love
The
that one.
fact that Teslas can see and predict a crash is about to happen with 100% accuracy and start pre-tensioning the seatbelts, like that is unmatched. No one else can do that. Silver Spider.
The nagging.
Okay. Omar?
The Cybertruck stainless steel exoskeleton. I was just looking at that video of the thieves trying to break in. They couldn't get in.
Nice. Josh?
That was the armored
Great.
glass. I want to
Good.
say the armored
Don't speak
glass.
out of turn. We're going around the clock as I see the speakers aligned.
Yeah, so there's that update that they just brought out where the brakes periodically will pulse. You won't feel it while it's raining, but to keep the rotors dry.
All right, Meta.
Glass.
That was going to be my answer, but I have a reason. He doesn't.
Wes.
Seat occupancy sensors.
Nice. Tizali.
Well, I was going to say the safety glass because
Well, it's gone. Come on, you got 3 seconds.
Okay, I have
3,
another one. Okay, another one
2.
is the batteries being on the floor, giving it a very low center of gravity so it doesn't flip.
All right.
Yeah, impossible to roll over.
Good performance under pressure. Silver Spider.
I think I already said it. The nagging.
You have to come up with a new one.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't put my hand up again.
Well, no, this we're playing a game. We're going around the clock and naming a safety feature that hasn't been named yet. So let's see if Lincoln wants to play or anybody else. If you have a safety feature in mind that the speakers haven't said, there's one that you guys haven't said, by the way. It's like apparent.
Is it my turn yet?
No. Michelle?
Well, you can play it about typing it in the chat, but over temperature protection / dog mode.
Yes.
The
Nice.
occupant.
But that's
That's
not the
a
one I was
huge
going
one.
to
If you
go.
got kids, if you got a
Yeah.
dog, that's huge.
All right. Now the turn is Omar, Josh, and then Meta. Let's see if Omar and Josh can guess what Meta is about to say.
Emergency lane departure avoidance.
Okay, Josh?
Yeah, so I would say all the headlighting systems. I mean, there's no Tesla with bad headlights.
Nice. Meta?
Absolutely everybody's favorite safety feature, the nag, to make sure you're not asleep behind the wheel.
Somebody already said that
They already
twice.
said that. You're not
Go
paying
with the cabin
attention.
Oh no!
camera. The cabin camera. Come on.
I
Ah.
lost camera and I lost audio in between. All right, I lose.
All right. Well, we're gonna skip you next time. Tesla Motion. There's one you guys like one of my favorites that you guys haven't said yet. Tesla Motion.
Have you guys mentioned acceleration yet? Like,
Yep, that Omar mentioned already.
all right, instant
Disqualified.
acceleration saved me on the
Disqualified.
Massachusetts.
No. Omar.
Well, the obstacle aware acceleration is huge. If it sees you're in front of an obstacle, it turns down the acceleration.
Nice. Josh.
All right, I'll give you tossing a softball out here, but the trailer tow mode, it automatically activates when a load is sensed, even if the driver forgets to turn it on.
Oh, nice. I didn't even know that. That's a new one. Tezali.
So because there's no internal combustion engine, they can redesign the front end and put those tusks for accident crash. Has better crash protection because I think they call them tusks.
Joseph.
I've only got one, so boot me after. The battery cell structure in the battery pack preventing fires.
Yeah, we actually didn't say that in the game, even though it came up earlier. Okay, you guys still haven't. Should I name it?
There's so many of them.
I know there's so many. You have a list ready? No
I have a
Googling,
few
guys.
more that are on the top of my head. I mean, autopilot's an obvious one. The fact that
Mm-hmm.
autopilot comes standard on every model sold. They don't sell any car without an ADAS. I mean, this ADAS has literally saved people's lives. They are drunk, they pass out, they would have killed themselves, someone else, and it doesn't happen because they just ship this on every Tesla standard.
Josh.
Yeah, so I would say the titanium bar that goes at the front of the battery pack. When they brought that out on the Model S, they put a big trailer hitch out in the middle of the road, and it just obliterated it without damaging the pack. That was introduced, I believe, late 2012 or early 2013.
Oh, that's at the bottom, right? Not the front of the battery. At the bottom.
It's at the bottom front edge, yeah, the approach edge of the battery
Oh,
pack.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those stories. Man. People think stock is volatile now. You should go back to those stories. Anyway, Tizali.
Using artificial intelligence to redesign how a car is made to prevent injury during collisions.
Mm-hmm. You guys haven't named bioweapon defense mode.
Oh yeah, I love that feature in my
Literally
Model
was on
S.
my list.
Yeah. and also I think regen is also but I think Tesla said one pedal, right? One pedal driving.
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing.
I guess that counts.
Kind of goes along with the one pedal driving, but the brake pad life.
Mm-hmm. Omar, anything else? What else
Yeah,
is on
that's
your
a really
mind?
good point. The brakes don't wear out. Yeah, there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
other things. I mean, we talked about over-the-air software updates. We talked about fleet telemetry. I mean, that's huge. Nobody else does that.
Yeah. Being connected to the mothership in the event of a collision, Tesla's got all the data. That's a big deal.
They now call 911 for you automatically. The roof of the car is like really strong. You know, they say you could put a couple elephants on it. I mean, you look at that guy who rolled down the hill again. Was the car crushed? No. I mean, it's kind of incredible.
Metis coming up because he thought of one after dropping off for the last 10 rounds.
Yeah, I mean, is it a safety feature to avoid dealerships?
That does keep you safe from getting ripped off.
Ooh, I got one.
Go
It's not
ahead.
really Tesla. Yeah, it's not Tesla exclusive. It doesn't count. I was just gonna say no friggin' exhaust.
That
True.
does count.
Exhaust can
Yeah.
kill you. You leave
Yeah.
your car on and, fall asleep or something, it could kill you. That's definitely a safety feature.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go with those little new things they put on the doors on the Model 3 to improve, side crashes. That's not a Tesla original, but it's a good one.
What is that one? I haven't even heard of that one.
They basically have a little hook in the door that kind of hooks into the car body, which
It's a
improves.
crash pin.
Yeah,
It's a crash pin
exactly.
to stop deformity when there's an impact on the door direct. It holds
Hmm.
the bottom of the door in line with the frame where the battery pack is, where it has maximum strength.
Interesting. Any other that we haven't talked about?
Well, I mean, I'll just throw this out there. I mean, there's a lot of cars with backup cameras, but no car has as good resolution and accuracy as the Tesla backup cam.
Hmm.
3D park assist, baby.
I guess automatic speed adjustment is also a safety feature too.
Showing the speed limit on the car and having speed limit warnings also.
Mm-hmm.
Automatic tire wear indicator. It's a safety feature. A lot of people don't look at their tread, but the car's going to tell you now. Tesla is
Yeah.
the only one, I believe,
Yeah,
with that tech.
that's a really good one. I mean, good tires and bad tires can be the difference between a crash and no crash.
Meta.
All right, I had lost the audio, so if these are repeated, I've got two. One is the automatic error updates, and then the other one was from customer feedback, the auto high beams that came via an automatic error update.
And they now have in the European Model 3 full adaptive headlights. Avoid blinding others.
Tesla
And then
lists. Go ahead.
even when you blind others, they veer into you because people drive into the light. So it's good for both.
Tesla says advanced airbags, less cabin intrusion, helps preserve space for airbags to fully inflate and protect passengers.
I did say that earlier, not in that detail, but airbags for sure.
What did
Yeah,
you say
one
about
thing.
airbags?
The active airbags, Tesla has the best in the business.
Yeah, they actually look at the seat sensor and they look at what the weight is on the sensor. So if it's a kid on the seat, they're going to deploy the airbags differently than if it's an adult. And they have, a lot of kids actually sometimes get killed because the airbag just goes off too hard. And they also adjust it based on where you are on the seat. Are you leaning forward in the seat? Are you leaning back in the seat? What's the seat position? all of this is factored into how they deploy the
Oh
airbags.
man, I wonder how many people in the world know that fact. I didn't know. I mean, I think I knew that they adjusted for kids versus adults, but I didn't know it to that detail. Where if you're, if you're kind of like sitting forward or sitting back or sitting to your side, they can adjust it to that resolution. I didn't know that.
Actually, they've designed a custom airbag that goes around the screen so that you don't hit your head on the screen.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I did not know that either. Tezali?
How about the app? Let's say if you have your kid driving your Tesla, you can monitor their speed, set their speed, put it in chill mode, things like that.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole set of them. Chill mode, valet mode, speed limit mode. Speed limit mode was created after somebody's kid took their Tesla for a joyride and crashed it and died. Now you can just go in, you can set a pin, and your kid can't go above the speed you set. That's a huge safety feature no gas car has.
Well, pin to drive itself is too, Omar.
Yeah, true. Your kid can't steal your car without the pin.
Tesla also says on the website, data-driven safety. We use anonymous or aggregated data from millions of Tesla vehicles to learn how collisions happen and how we can help prevent them in the future. These data points impact how we improve safety features with over-the-air software updates and inform the design of future vehicles.
Yeah, that's the AI I was talking about that they do to design the cars.
Yeah, and there's no way anybody else can do that. They can't even figure out the over-the-air updates that Tesla used to send in 2012, let alone do something like that.
I would even venture to say that mobile service to an extent is a safety feature, because if you've got something wrong with your car, let's say, just give you an example, a young mother with kids at home or whatever, something wrong with the vehicle, Tesla comes to you. She doesn't have to pack the kids in the car and drive all the way to a dealership and wait days to get it fixed. So to me, that's a safety feature.
Hmm. Yeah, we probably counted about, what, 40, 50 of them? And that's just the ones that we know.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And
Yeah.
people go, people aren't going to buy a Tesla because they don't like Elon. Really? You're going to put yourself in a car that's less safe because you don't like Elon? Take that, Elon, you crash and die. Haha, I showed him.
Well, it's one thing to put yourself at risk, but how about your loved ones?
Exactly. All right. Well, I didn't intend this space to be another 2-hour one, but here we are. um, that was a lot. I actually learned a lot. I mean, can you imagine? Like, I host daily spaces on the company now for coming up to 2 years, and I learn something new every day. Isn't that crazy? That's wild.
Yaman, let me say one thing just before, and I'll hop off here. Guys, Yaman's got a YouTube channel. Go subscribe if you want to get caught up on past spaces. Go subscribe right now, and you won't be disappointed. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you, Josh. Omar, any final words?
Yeah, well, this isn't really safety related, but I was just watching this, video with Ron Barron from 2020, and I thought it was really interesting. I mean, people probably seen this. We watched it a lot in 2020. But he said, look, for 6 years, the stock didn't go anywhere. But we look at the business, not the stock price. The business grew immensely during that period. And now it's catching up. So everybody goes, oh, 2020, 2021, stock was shooting up, and I wish I had bought it. And everybody looks at that period. Very few people look at the 6 years before that, where the stock was mostly flat. And very few people had the fortitude to hold that long. So we're now in a period where Tesla stock has been flat for 3 years, right? So, I mean, how many of us could have the patience to hold for three more before something happened? If, let's say, robo taxis aren't widely deployed until 2027, and then it starts to take off, but until then it's flat. I mean, how many investors have the patience in today's social media world where they're so sort of short-term focused? But I just see a lot of parallels between that situation and this situation. The market isn't necessarily giving them credit for it, but they're doing a lot of amazing things. I mean, we didn't even mention FSD in all of these safety features. We mentioned autopilot, but I mean, they're literally preventing hundreds to thousands of crashes a day with their active safety features. So we're talking about pedestrians, cyclists, people who aren't getting hit every day because of this technology. And people are not giving them credit for this. It's incredibly good what they're doing, but they're not getting credit for it. Instead, they're actually being treated as if they invented car crashes because they're trying to do this autopilot thing. They're being treated as if car crashes are happening because of autopilot. When you look at the data, more than 40,000 people died, and almost none of them were in a Tesla or using any kind of ADAS feature, right? So they're doing incredible good, but society's not necessarily giving them credit for it. But one day, whether it's an ad campaign or a book or just experiences with their friends, people will realize it one way or another in time. People will have enough of those stories where it saves them and they go, okay, I'm just not going with anything else. And at that point where they start to get credit for all the work they've been doing over years, I think it'll kind of be too late to catch them. So, yeah, it's important not to get too caught up in the short term and say, oh, this is a disaster. The stock isn't going anywhere. If you had had that type of mentality during this period where Ron Barron was holding from 2014 to 2020, you probably would have sold and you would have missed what happened from 2020 on. So, just something to kind of watch again and reflect on.
On that note, thank you very much, everybody. Have a good night, and I will talk to you all tomorrow. Take care.